Hey, it's your financial maven, Samantha Mittman-Besnoff, CPA. And for the last 30 years, yes, 30 years in the accounting world, I absolutely love sharing my insights and passion about money for individuals, entrepreneurs, and small business owners. Knowing your money and hopefully feeling less stressed about your money is what I call being financially empowered. Welcome to the Your Financial Maven podcast. This episode is with Morgan Anderson, enrolled agent. It was such a wonderful conversation that we realized we ended up chatting for a long time. So this is part 1 of 2. Welcome to the latest episode of Your Financial Maven. I am very excited for my guest today. With tax season coming up, and a lot of people are going, oh my goodness, taxes are coming up. And there's some great information here with regards to tax debt. So I'm going to tell you all about my guest, and we're going to talk about tax debt today. So welcome to Morgan Anderson, who is an enrolled agent. You have been relentlessly representing your clients for 24 years in both IRS and state tax agencies. You have helped to resolve thousands of clients' personal and business tax debts, whether it's income, payroll, sales tax. You also have published a book that says tax debt rule number 1, there's always a solution for individuals and professionals to use. It's a guide to help them identify the tax debt collection process. I love what you say in the last 24 years that you're planted firmly in this funky little corner of the tax world when it comes to solving past due debts with the IRS. You've worked with all 50 states. And it's true. You know, there are professionals like myself also as CPAs and enrolled agents that prepare returns or do other things with the tax work, but might not necessarily do the tax debt relief. So I love how you say funky little tax world. We have to keep it real and live. Accounting and tax is not as boring as some people might tend to think that it is. And so I love that you not only work with your clients, but you work with the trusted CPAs, other enrolled agents, other attorneys, people like that to help them with their tax debt. And this is great to have you here today, Morgan. So welcome to Your Financial Maven.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, I am too.
And it probably sounds pretty funny to everybody who's listening
Yes.
in on your podcast for people to say, I'm excited to talk about tax debt. But I have a feeling if you tune into this episode and listen all the way through, you're going to hear some great nuggets of information between the two of us.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
We have personalities behind it, which is going to make it entertaining.
I know. I mean, I just realized I graduated from college 30 years ago this coming December. Like scary in that way. Like, wow, it's been 30 years. And what it means to be an accountant or a CPA, what the image was, the guy behind the desk with the shirt, the tie, the pocket protector with pens and pencils in it, the calculator, the 10 key. And that isn't the image, I guess, anymore. I mean, accounting and tax has come a long way. And I think you would agree with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's the people, it's the personalities. You don't have to wear glasses and, like you said, the pocket protector and be this very dry, monotonous person. Where if you're sitting on the other side of the desk from them and your eyes roll back and you're like, how quickly can I get the heck out of their office? Right?
Right.
But, being in this world and even dealing with the agents at the IRS in the states that I've dealt with, they will start out very stodgy like
Of
that.
course. I mean, they're just doing their job.
Yeah, they've got a job. Their job is to collect a bill. If you break it down into that, you're starting to take some of the mystery away of having to call the IRS or respond to a notice. But if you're friendly to them, it really starts breaking down some barriers. And I've always found you get further with honey than you do vinegar.
Absolutely. I think with anything in customer service, if you have grace and your kindness, and yeah, you're panicked, you're nervous, but just talk to them. They are people just like us. Those agents are doing their job. They're following a script to some degree because there are laws and regulations that they have to follow. They can't just decide on their own yes or no. And so they don't make up the rules. They don't make up the policies. They're just there to enforce them. And I think that's important for people to know.
Absolutely. Now it's still a chess game.
Yes.
You don't wanna call them and say, "Well,
Yes.
this is how much money I have in my bank account. This is how much I have in
Right.
investments, and oh my gosh, how much is my bill, and I can't write a check, but what do I do?" Because their job is to collect, so always keep that in mind. So if you disclose something, expect that they're gonna act on it, right?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So it's like playing poker. You wanna keep your cards close to your chest, but you never wanna be rude. You never want to be demeaning to them because they have the power to take action.
Absolutely. And when you get to that point, whether intentional or unintentional or by mistake or whatever that is, there's something that led you to that path. So it's okay. It can be figured out. Now, you may still have to pay something to the IRS or to the states that you're working with. But I think that if, like you said, if you have those conversations and you're being honest and working with them, but you don't have to reveal the whole world to them, I think it can all work out to some degree in the end.
There's always a solution.
There is always a solution. Yes. I mean, yes, we have seen high profile cases in the news over the years regarding tax debt and things like that. But hopefully, for most people, it will not get to that level. You know, when you have layers and layers of people helping you in your business or personal life, and you think somebody is taking care of it and you're not paying attention to it, that's where I think things can get out of hand. And that's why you need to pay attention to your finances and understanding your money. And that's why I do what I do as well. And get that word out.
Yes, if there's one thing I can tell every business owner, have checks and balances in place, but it always has to pass through your desk. And you always need to take an extra moment and an extra step to verify what your in-house accountant is telling you. So a lot of the business cases I've had, the issue is payroll tax.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I
And
am sure it
here's
is.
what, right? So
Yes.
I would say 95% of my business clients, it's a payroll tax or a sales tax issue at the state level. And here's why. The in-house accountant or your office manager, whomever you decide to delegate paying the taxes to, can say to you, "Oh yeah, I paid that." And unless you track that payment through your bank account and make sure it's coming out, you're just taking that person at their word. This is where embezzlement happens. Whenever there's a payroll tax debt or a sales tax debt, they will tell you those monies are paid, and that's where they take the money from your business because it takes the IRS or the states, it can take the states usually about 2 quarters to catch up with sales tax, maybe up to 4 quarters to catch up with payroll tax. With the IRS, it can take 2 years.
But I would think that if you have an issue for payroll and the state gets caught up to you first, then that issue is also going to have an issue with the IRS too. So if you can get your state resolved, hopefully, or whatever is, then you can also start that process with the IRS. And I think you make a very valuable point about you have your in-house office manager or bookkeeper, even if you hire an independent contractor like myself that helps clients with their accounting and tax needs, you are the one at the end of the day, the taxpayer is responsible for their numbers. You can pay somebody to prepare it all you want, but you are responsible. And you have people saying, but I'm too small of a business. Have some internal control procedures. Like when they pay that bill or the electronic transfer goes forward, have them upload that receipt and check it against your bank account to see that it actually went through, and don't just rely that they've done it. And there are tips and tricks I learned when I was an auditor about testing internal control. And one of the things was when your staff goes on a vacation, then you step in and review everything, or you have somebody else do the work. It's just a check. It's not anything against that person, but you're checking to make sure that there's no embezzlement, that there's nothing missing. It's your business. You should be doing that. Don't
Yes,
apologize
yes.
for that. That is your business.
Mm-mm. And if anybody says, "Well, what do you mean you wanna double check my work?" That is a big red flag.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if
Definitely.
if they don't respect you as being the business owner, as it's your name and your finances that are on the line at the top of this organization, if they don't respect that and they want to get defensive and then reactionary about you wanting to double check their work, there's something wrong.
Yeah, I agree. A red flag. And you may not realize it. You're in the throes of your business, but you really need to know that They're your staff, they're your employee, they're your contractor, so it is okay to ask those questions. And since we kind of started talking about small business owners, I just want to ask kind of what are the things that you see when it comes to like the payroll and the sales tax with small business owners that, advice you can give them? I had a client who didn't realize or realized she had to pay sales tax, but was in that mode of, I don't have enough, I'm just getting started, I'm a little scared, and kind of put her head in the sand about not paying her sales tax. And it had gone on for like 2 years. And she started getting the notices about you have to pay. And so she contacted me to do her tax work and then said, oh, I have this. And I said, okay, this is what we need to do. You need to go back and file your returns. You need to pay. You might pay penalties and interest. We might be able to abate some of that penalty or interest by being first time, but you have to be willing to take the time to do that. And she was. She got everything all cleaned up and resolved. It didn't get too out of hand. But what are some of the things, the advice that for small business owners that are a little different than what you would give to your individual clients when it comes to debt?
Great question. So for sales tax, what I would strongly suggest people do is open a separate bank account. And every time you run your receipts, if you have a retail shop, it's usually at the end of the day, you run your reports and okay, here's how much product we sold, here's what the cost was. And you see that sales tax number, move that money out of your operating right into that sales tax account right away every time you run your reports. And then you keep it away from your operating money. So it doesn't tempt you to use that money for buying more product or paying payroll. It's so easy to, oh, well, I'll catch up next week.
Yeah, you're right.
You
You're
know,
right.
you slide a little bit and it gets
Right.
quickly out of hand.
And I think you're not wrong in that there is a methodology, and I don't know if you've heard of this called profit first, where you're paying yourself first, and then the amount left over every time you get sales goes to the operational piece of the business. So some profit in the operational, and that operational you can then break up into sales tax, estimated tax. But if you run your numbers, you'll know of this operational, this has to be pulled out for sales tax. This has to be pulled out for estimated taxes. This, for whatever it is. And I think it is a mentality. It is a habit of pulling those things out and then saying, okay, everything's out that needs to be out. Now I'm left over with whatever, and I can do what I need with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And try to I know as business owners, we're passionate about our business, like what we're selling, what we're doing. Auto mechanics, they're great at working on engines, but they're not necessarily business. They don't have the business
Right. Or they
acumen.
don't, or they're not paying attention to it because they're so focused on what they're doing.
Right, on their passion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's very easy to feel like dealing with the financial aspect of your business is
Yes.
like, oh, it's the last thing I want to do. It's
Right.
bamboo shoots under the nails.
Right. Right.
But remember, it's that thing that you least look forward to doing that probably warrants some of your most attentive
Yeah.
time every
Yeah.
single day.
I
It
agree.
really is. Especially when running a business, it is. And then the other thing I would say too is leverage your relationship with your bookkeeper and with your accountant, with your CPA or your accountant, your enrolled agent, whomever you use. Think of them as your players on your bench, and they are your team that you are implementing to forward your business. So you have no better confidants than them. Think of them as board members, right?
Right, leveraging those professionals as a way to help you manage your business.
Yes, absolutely. Listen, when we step into business as a business owner, there's no book that says, "Okay, now make sure you tend to this, and make sure you tend to that, and make sure you tend to this." You can talk to an advisor, and they still won't know every step of your business that you will need to take into consideration. But when it comes to finances, there's pretty strict rules that we all have to follow and things that we all need to pay attention to because let's face it, money makes our business worthwhile. It gives us our financial fortress that we're all focusing on for ourselves and our families. It lets you exist from day to day, week to week, month to month. So, money is one of the most important things that you should focus on as a business owner or as an individual. This applies to the individuals as well. So, make your CPA, make your accountant, make your bookkeeper your trusted confidant. Ask for their advice. They're going to help you stay 10 steps ahead of where you currently are because they have that skill.
Right, like, I don't have an auto mechanic skill, like, I can do some things, I can put fluid into my engine, I can change a tire, but I cannot I was taught years and years ago how to change my oil, but it was just something you don't use it, you lose it, that
Ah,
experience, and I think that business owners yes, it's the most frustrating part, I think, of running a business, but if you have a handle on it, you understand your business, you understand your money, you understand the obligations, yeah, believe me, I don't necessarily like to have to pay estimated taxes to the federal government and state government, and in Pennsylvania, you have to do local too. I don't like to have to do that, but it's just part of running my business. And if you don't wanna get in trouble there and run into debt because that's the other thing I don't know if small business owners and entrepreneurs understand is if you are doing really well in your business and you're not paying estimated taxes, you could be paying an underpayment penalty at the end of the year when you file because you didn't put enough away, because it's self-employment tax, and that can add up. And then you feel like, "I don't have the money set aside to pay for that," and then you kinda ignore it or let it go. And I think for small business owners who pay self employment tax, as we get to the individual side of things, that can really affect your individual tax side. And that can add to that. So, from business to individuals, what are the things that you talk to individuals about to give them advice? Because a lot of people are so scared that the IRS is going to come knocking on their door and arrest them and put them into an orange jumpsuit right away when they make that first mistake, right? Which
right,
isn't the
right.
case. And
Not
the
the
other
case at all.
it's not the case. And the thing I will say is the IRS will never call you when they're sending out their notices about initial debts and payments, any mistakes. There will always well, I guess they're getting into the electronic side if you have your irs.gov portal account, but they'll mail you the notice. The same thing with the states. They will mail you the notice because of all the phishing scams and all that fraud that's going on too with that kind of stuff. So it's important to know they're not going to show up on your door if this occurs initially. I am assuming they will if you let 20, 30 years go by, but you know.
Right, right. So anytime you have a debt that's owed at both the state or the federal level, there's a series of notices that are required to be sent to you. And those are sent out by the computer system automatically. And they escalate in aggression the longer the debt sits
Right.
there and
They get a little
penalties and
nastier.
interest. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They at first they kind of I always call it the ankle biter. Hey, I don't know if you noticed this taxpayer. You filed a tax return with a balance owed. Could you please pay it?
Right.
Here's
Right.
how you pay it, right?
Or
That's
at
how they
least
start.
review because it could be a mistake. It certainly could be a mistake, and you
Yes.
may not owe that. And so
Right.
responding is what you should be doing.
Pretty please. That's
Right.
what they're saying
That's
with
the
that
pretty
first
please
notice.
letter. Right.
And then they get more aggressive. Hey, okay, we know you got that notice. We know we sent it to you. You know that there's a balance owed. We know there's a balance owed. You need to pay it. So here's a coupon, pay it, send it in. We're giving you 30 days. And then 30 days goes by, you don't address it. Then the next notice comes out. And it's like, okay, no, what part of this weren't you listening to, taxpayer? We're serious. Like, we're charging you penalties and interest on
Yeah,
this.
and they
Pay
add
it.
up. They add up.
Yeah, and they do. And then they get ugly. Then they're like, okay, you haven't addressed it. We know you know about it. We know you know that we know about it because you've gotten the notices. Now we're going to start threatening action. And you want to head it off before it escalates to that degree. You just do. It benefits you to do that. And there's a lot of different ways to handle it.
Yeah, if you let it escalate to that point, at that point, they're not necessarily gonna be as nice to listen to what's going on than if stop it before it gets to that escalation point. I think it would be harder to manage or work through what it is they're asking.
Absolutely. Now, what I will tell you is most people who have a tax debt are deathly afraid of receiving those notices to such a point that they won't even open them. They'll shove them in the back of a drawer and just, I can't process this right now. I need to think about it. I need to get that next contract so I have money so then I can start addressing it. And I will tell you, 99% of the people that end up reaching out to me about their tax debt situation and come on with my company have been in the same position. Right now, the IRS estimates that 22% of self employed individuals have a tax debt at the federal level.
Wow. Wow.
22%.
Yeah.
So if you are in that percentage, know that you have nothing to be ashamed of. You have nothing to feel bad about. Everybody at some point in their life has a financial setback. This just happens to be your situation right now. But there's a solution. There's always a solution.
And I guess that's, you say you go ups and downs in financial, but sometimes it truly could be a mistake. And if you
Yeah. Oh,
ignore that it
absolutely.
just truly was a mistake and you ignore it, it adds up, it could get worse. And I agree with you. There is always a way to make a solution. I've had clients who've owed balances but had to be put on installment payment plans because they can't afford to pay the full thing up front. And while, yeah, they have to pay some interest or fees for that, they're still then in good graces with the IRS or the state because they're attempting to pay what they owe.
Absolutely, and there are programs, if you have a debt and you can't pay it, they have programs where they will recognize it and put you in what they call an uncollectible status, or they will settle the debt. So there are ways to do it. There's always a solution.
There's always a solution. I know. I love that you say there's always a solution. Now, I know with the IRS, and I'm assuming most states, there usually is, if this is the first time you've had this situation and you've kind of let it go, you're ignoring it, that there may be some first time abatement of interest or penalties. Or, like you said, maybe there's programs where they'll make a compromise and the debt then goes away. When you talk to clients that are kind of at that point, what are some steps or things that you do to first, have them climbing down off the wall because they're freaking out about this, but like help them through that process?
The first thing is you have to focus on not adding any more problems to the debt as it exists right now. So draw the line in the sand and focus on your current obligations. If you are self-employed individual, make your next estimated tax payment. And if you find budgeting money is a real struggle, sit down with your accountant and figure out what your percentage of tax obligation is. So every time you have a contract come in, first thing you do, make a tax payment. And then every time you have a contract come in, you make that payment and you will be good.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that you can make a tax deposit every week if you want to.
Yeah, if you wanted to, you just have to remember which quarter you're doing it in because they do want to know first, second, third, fourth quarter. The thing that drives me nuts about that though is I wish the IRS would be on the normal quarters, every 3 months. And they are not.
I
And so
know, they're
states
not.
follow the same way. And people are
They're
probably
not,
listening going, what do you mean? First quarter is January to March.
right?
Second quarter is
And it's
April,
due
and
in
and
April,
it's due April 15th or 16th, depending if there's a holiday or a weekend. And then second quarter is April and May, which is due June 15th,
June 15th,
right? So it's
exactly.
not July 15th where you would think 3 months, no. And then it is June, July, and August due September 15th. And then you have September, October, November, December, which is due January 15th of the following year. And most states will follow what the federal government does too, but I don't understand that because they still give you till January to file. I've been doing this for 30 years and I still don't get it. IRS, if
I
you're
do
listening,
not
I
know.
don't get it.
No, no, it's
No.
one of those funky anomalies. It's so funny. For years, I will say September 15th, and then for some reason, October 15th will pop in my head.
Well,
And
is
it's
that
like
payroll? Because isn't payroll different and sales tax could be
payroll is
different,
different.
right? So this is individual taxes, but payroll and sales tax are different. And you have to pay attention to that.
And this is why you have specialists like you and I
Yes.
to give you guidance. Please, if
Right.
you ever have a question, reach out to your accountant, reach
Absolutely.
out to your
Or enrolled
CPA.
agent, if you're using an enrolled agent. I want to really know how you got into where you're at. CPAs and enrolled agents are similar. You're licensed through the IRS. I am licensed through my state. And there's some other differences, but how did you kind of get into this, as you put it, funky little world of tax accounting?
So I was a college attempt and fail.
Okay. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong
I
with that.
got through 2 years of college, and I went to a school that had trimesters.
Oh, ooh, yeah, yeah, those are tough.
Those are tough, and I was too young at the time to be focusing on what I wanna be when I grow up. I was trying to figure out how to live from day to day. So, I dropped out, and then I was working, like, 3 jobs at a time, just to make ends meet, young and silly and just had no direction. And I ended up answering an ad for an administrative assistant at a company that handled tax debt, and it was one of the pioneers nationwide, and I fell into a world that I loved. I've always been great with numbers and law, and I love helping people, so it was this fantastic mesh of all these different things that are true to who I am. And in speaking with them, I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna go get my CPA." And I went to the local university and I got my transcripts and I handed it to them and they said, "Well, you may have paid 25,000 a year for 2 years and had these credits, but because you were on a trimester schedule, we're putting you back at the beginning. It's second quarter of your freshman year." And I was like, "There is no way I just paid $50,000 for credits to end up at the beginning, essentially starting over." So I was talking to some people at the company about it, and they said, "Well, what about the enrolled agent?" And it was a very quiet program at the time because this is 2001.
Yeah, you're right, it was very quiet. I don't think people realize enrolled agents have to go through a lot of stringent education and information and testing, and we all have to keep up our certification, and there's different rules about
Yeah.
that. I don't think people realize that. It's yes.
No, and when I took it, it was back when the CPA exam was given, I think once a year, maybe twice a year.
It would have been and I only know this because it took a while to finish my CPA. It was twice a year in person, depending on where you lived. Like, I lived in Lancaster, but grew up in Philadelphia, and I had to go take it in Philadelphia at these large convention centers. It was 4 parts. You would sit in these rooms for hours with your pencil and little calculator, and if you passed 1 or 2 parts or whatever, then you only go for the other parts you didn't take. And I only remember that because I was pregnant in 2001, 2002, and took it almost 9 months pregnant, and I think I gave the
Oh.
proctors a heart attack. Had my son had my son right before tax season in January of 2002, and then I had actually then took it again in May because this one part I took, the passing was 75, I kept getting 73s and 74s.
Oh,
It was a kill I mean,
that is
it was a
brutal.
killer. I did pass. So, yes, that the one financial part took me forever to take, but yes, when it was by hand and twice a year. I guess now it's all computerized and it's completely different.
So when I took the EA exam, it was given once a year, 2 days, and it was 4 parts, and it was the same thing, but it was given at the exact same time nationwide, so nobody could call and give you, "Hey, here's what they're testing on." Now remember, this was back before the internet and all the educational programs that you can access on the internet, so it was books, and you took
And
practice
tapes,
exams
books
in
and
books and
tapes.
tapes, yes. The first session, I passed 3 out of 4 parts, and my 3rd part, I missed by 2 points. But it took 4 months to get your results, and then you had to wait until the next test cycle to take that one part. So it took me 2 years to take it because they only gave it once a year. But it is the equivalent of a CPA or the bar exam at a federal level regarding taxation. So, yeah, the enrolled agent license is becoming more and more prevalent with CPAs. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The big difference is you can sign an audit.
Mhm. I can do audits, I don't do them anymore, but I can do audits, reviews, compilations, also represent in front of the IRS, and of course, certain levels with tax returns and other stuff with state stuff and everything. And we are licensed by the state that we pretty much live in or where we've applied for. Although those licenses can be used in other states, most states have nexus and reciprocity. I am licensed in Pennsylvania as a CPA, but I can sign off on an audit if I do those, but I haven't done those in forever.
That's the big thing. We can't sign off on an audit, but we are licensed nationwide, and all of the states recognize us as being tax experts.
And there's some different levels of requirement for continuing education. I know I have to go 80 hours every 2 years for my CPA, and it has to not just be in tax. Mine has to be in audit, tax, ethics. I think Enrolled Agents is really focused on that tax side.
Tax side and ethics.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you're right, it is becoming a bigger thing. I'm seeing it more and more through my Facebook groups, which I love because I love the ability to have the different perspectives and have it because, yes, I work mainly in tax, but I still do accounting and bookkeeping work. I still do other things, and I think people need to understand that, and I don't know with Enrolled Agents as much. I know for myself, I have an engagement letter, I have a tax organizer, and I make sure those clients realize that I am not what they call a ghost preparer, somebody that won't sign off on returns and give you bad advice. Yes, that's a whole nother
Yes.
issue. And
Yes.
I've talked about
There's a
that
lot of
before.
scams out
A
there.
lot of scams out there. Yes.
I had a client that we just submitted an audit reconsideration for, and it was somebody who wouldn't sign the return. And this gentleman was from a different country. It was his second year of being a tax paying individual in the United States. And it was somebody referred to him within his community, some guy who was in a different state. And the person inflated credits to create a refund and had 2 bank accounts listed to receive the refund. Part of it went here, part of it went to this guy. And this guy said, "Hey, it's only gonna cost you $250." So, of course, he paid the guy, and when he got this audit notification, he reached out to this preparer and he said, "Well, what do you think? Nobody's gonna do a tax return for $250," and hung up on him. So we've had to submit this guy's information and, "Hey, this guy inflated numbers. Here's our numbers." And if you'll notice on the refund, part of it went to this guy's bank account.
Oh, fraud at its best, right?
Oh,
It
it's
is.
awful, but
It
it
is.
happens,
It
and
does
everybody
happen.
needs to be aware of this, and it's
Yes.
sickening to all of us in the
It
industry
is. It
who are like,
drives me nuts.
"Oh, gosh."
Well, and that's something like I say to all my clients, and I've talked to family members and people who end up sitting down and having a conversation to see if I'll take them on. And I will always say to them, here's my process. Have a signed engagement letter because you should know what is going on. I'll send you a tax organizer because your data is what I'm going off of. I will not audit your work. What you give me is what I'm going to put on the return. And of course, analyze it for reasonableness and as I tell my clients, if you can defend the position you're taking, of course, the position normally has to follow the tax laws, but if you have the documentation to show you traveled to Puerto Rico and 90% of it was business, and you then decided to stay an extra few days, well, that part we can't deduct. We can deduct the things that show that it's business. And I think that's important for individuals and business owners. Have the documentation because if you don't, they're going to question you. Like mileage, I think, is a big thing with the IRS if you're not
Huge.
tracking your mileage.
Huge. And there are apps now
Yep.
that will let you keep those records. Just make sure to download the
Right.
report and save it, right?
Right.
And give it to your accountant.
Right. Give it to the person preparing the return, the professional.
Yes. Buy $100 scanner. And at the end of every day or every week, just scan your receipts, label them and save them in a folder, and then you don't have to worry about it. A lot of what goes into our financial picture is just habits and getting into good habits.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, you're working with a client and they're panicked, right? They've get these bills.
Right.
They
I'm so sorry. We're going back to this.
Oh, and listen, we're gonna go back and forth. It's you know what? I mean, that's the thing. We could talk all day about procedures. Like
Yes.
my engagement letter, I lay out because I'll get it from the American Institute of CPAs, the AICPA, because they've done their research, their legalese, whatever. I will use their template. Of course, I add some of the things about my procedure. I have secure client portals, I have ways of messaging because I hate to say this, and I'm sure you do it, and I say this to my clients too. It's about CYA, covering yourself and protecting yourself. But in my engagement letter, I talk about the obligations and what could liabilities could be. And you're giving me the numbers to prepare your return, but I am not auditing them. I am not going back to you and testing your internal controls if you're a business or testing it in your individual to see is it truly personal or business. I'm trusting you to a degree. I mean, I can clearly see after 30 years certain things that I say, I don't know if that's really business, and I don't know if you can. take that,
We
have
called
those
it
conversations.
the sniff test,
Yeah, the
right?
sniff test,
Does it
right? Like,
smell a little
yeah,
weird?
I don't know if I'm not gonna I have an issue with that, and I put that all in this engagement letter, and granted, my letter through the portal, it reads about 5 pages long, and I've had clients say, "Do I have to read it before I sign it?" And I tell them, "You should read it, just like any contract, just
Yeah.
like any letter you get from the IRS from your state, you should read it before you sign off on it." And I do have some clients that just, "Oh, I'm just gonna sign it." I'm like, "Well, let me review it with you quickly," because I think it's important when you get those notices in the mail, it is panicky, right? Because I'll be honest, I got a notice this tax season. I am a CPA. I am working on 50 to 100 returns in a short amount of time. It is me, myself, and I. I don't have anybody else helping me. And I went to do my return, and my husband is my reviewer. He'll look at our returns. And we both missed it. We just missed something with my business and with how we calculated tuition credits and stuff like that. And I
One of the
got the
1,000
notice.
things you can put on your tax
The
return.
1,000 things that you can put on your tax returns, tuition to get potential tuition credit, whatever. He missed it, I missed it, filed the returns, and I did owe, but then I got the notice that I owed more. I was like,
Oh,
"Damn it." Just was so mad. I was like, "Damn it." Now, I panicked myself, and I'm a CPA just because I'm like, did I do this for my clients? Or was it just like, for me, it was, I have other clients. Now I know my clients were fine because I did go back and realize what I did. It was something that none of my other clients with tuition credits would have it was something I did with the business, whatever, marked something wrong and clicked a button and off it went.
just so easy to do.
So
Oh my
easy to
goodness.
do.
Yeah.
And I was like, "All right." And I called and I said, "Okay, I am actually going to amend my return because I realized what the mistake was and I actually should not have paid this." But they said to me, "It doesn't matter. You still need to pay what you owe. And if you amend the return or you then request for a review, then you can do it after, but you have to pay that." This is what he told me at the IRS. I said, "Fine, I'll pay what I owe, but I am amending the return because I saw what my mistake was." And I'm expecting that money back. I'm still waiting, but
So, just for the audience, just so you all know, if you believe the bill is wrong, you have a right under the Taxpayer Bill of Rights not to pay more than you justifiably owe. So use that Taxpayer Bill of Rights as a reason to say, I don't want to pay this because A, I can't afford to. B, I know this is wrong. I've found the line item. I am filing an amended return. It will be out in the mail to you. I want to hold on my account.
I wish I had known that, but I
He
didn't.
should have never pushed you into that. But here's a perfect example, everyone, of what can happen.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, what I owed is not much for me, and we were able to pay it understood, but it was frustrating
But
because,
still,
yeah,
yes,
you're right. I should have paused, taken a breather, and said, "Okay, there are taxpayer bill of rights." I think I was just like, "I'm just going to pay it. I'll amend the return. I didn't want to deal with it."
it's easy to fall into that. Really. I mean, hey, everyone, this is a CPA who fell
Yes.
into that. And this is why I say, if you have a situation, don't feel like you have to hide it behind closed doors and
Right.
you're ashamed of letting people know that there's a problem there, because that only makes you stick your head in the sand more and then be afraid. And then you give up your power position in dealing with the situation. And don't do that.
And I mean, I could have just paid it and not even bothered with amending the return, even though I know, it had to be amended. I realized that I could have completely ignored it, just paid it and been done with it. But I realized, well, no, technically that's money back to me. Like I shouldn't have paid as much as I did. And yeah, I'm still waiting for that amended return to be finalized and what is owed back to me, but I know that'll be a while. But you're right. There are taxpayer bill of rights. What are some other things, like you said, that if you can't pay it or you feel that, yes, there's a mistake and I don't want to pay it now, put a hold on my account, what are some other things that individuals or small business owners can utilize or say, "Hey, my taxpayer bill of rights say this," so that you can talk to a professional or get it resolved because they only give you 30 days or 60 days to take care of it.
Right, and a lot of times when you get that bill, it's more than your budget allows you to pay. It really is. Do not ever put it on a credit card. And if you can't write a check to pay it off, Do not put it on a credit card, and they are very quick to suggest that to you.
Okay. I didn't. I wrote a check. I did write a check.
Okay, good.
Or I went online to the direct pay and did an
Portal,
ACH because
yeah,
it came right out
yeah.
of the bank account. Yes,
So
no credit
smart
card.
to do it that way. Do
Yeah.
not put it on a credit card, because here's one thing I want you to know or to think about. How much interest rate is your credit card charging?
They're charging what, 20% now? I
Yeah.
mean,
I
they're
On a
high.
good one,
Yeah. Very
25.
true.
I've seen
Very
them for
true.
25,
Right.
right? So unless you can put it on the card and you're doing it strategically to get points or
Right.
miles or
And you pay it
cash
off the
back,
next month.
and you pay it off within 30 days or within that billing cycle. If you cannot pay it off within that billing cycle, do not put it on your credit card. The IRS is only, I say this understanding how obnoxious that sounds, but the IRS is only charging 8% on underpayment. Your credit card is charging 20 to 25% interest. So just keep that in mind. There's a late filing penalty. If it's the first time you're having a problem, you can ask them to take it off under the first time abatement administrative waiver. It is in stone if it's the first time you've had a problem or you have had a clean tax record for the last 3 years
Oh,
plus,
okay.
you can ask for a first time abatement. So if you had a problem 10 years ago and then you've been clean and then you had a problem now, ask for that first time
Okay.
abatement.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
that'll take off the penalties, not the interest, but the penalties. So this is a lot of what we do is we look at leveraging all of these aspects when we say to a client, here's what we recommend as a solution, taking into account the interest rates, taking into account the collection time frame they have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would have never thought of that with the interest rate, but you're right. If you put it on your credit card knowing from a timing aspect, like your credit card, the timing just closed and you put that transaction on it, you now have 2 months to pay it back on your credit card as long as you can pay it back. Because you're right, that interest just, we all know that it's tough right now with interest and rates. At some point will come down. They're working on that, I guess.
So they say.
So they say. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of my conversation with Morgan Anderson, enrolled agent. Check out next week for part 2. Follow, like, and subscribe to Your Financial Maven wherever you listen to your podcasts. And make sure that you leave your money stories or questions for me at www.yourfinancialmavenpodcast.com. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about money. The purpose of this podcast is to provide general information on the subjects discussed. It is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. It is not meant to resolve your specific financial needs or situations. Please consult with your CPA, tax, or financial professionals. Your Financial Maven is hosted and produced by Samantha M. Besnoff, CPA, and Your Financial Maven, LLC. Editing is done by Chris Zarnock of KM Zen Creative. Music is written, composed, and performed by Daniel Shore.